Welcome to the latest episode of 305 Vox Populi. I'm Mayor Manny Cid. With us today is Father Lucas. How you doing, Father?
I'm very well. How are you, Manny?
All is good. Actually, I'm doing great. Check out this place. I mean, this is truly phenomenal. God's house. Where are we, Father? So folks know, because I think from the inside, it looks amazing. But from the outside, a lot of folks don't know that this exists.
Yeah, and I just, as we were setting up, I was talking to some of the staff. They said, they've driven by here many times, didn't know what was inside. A lot of people see the dome outside, might think it's a synagogue or a mosque, because it's a Middle Eastern-looking dome on the outside. But we're in an Orthodox church. It's Christ the Savior Cathedral, and it's probably a very unique building in South Florida, because it's one of the only ones I know that's frescoed from top to bottom, as you can see. And this was all hand done. It was one main painter with a couple of assistants who came and did it over the course of a few years, and got it to where it looks like this. So it was a labor of love from the people, and they wanted it to look very traditional, like it was in the places they came from in Europe.
No, this is a special place. When you walk in here, you feel the goodness, right? You feel God and you feel the Holy Spirit. I mean, this is a truly an amazing place. But about you, Father, why did you decide to become a father? And why Orthodox, right? Why the Orthodox church? So I think those are two questions that'll give folks a glimpse as to who you are. But both of those whys.
Yeah, when I was in college, I started going to my home parish a lot, and my parish priest was very encouraging. I didn't know I wanted to become a priest, though, and pastor a parish. It wasn't on my radar. It was after I got married and already had kids, because in the Orthodox Church, pastors are generally married. It was at that point, it's at some time when I was working in the banking industry, that I realized that my favorite thing to do is to go to church, to help out, to assist the priest there, to help people when they're in need. And he started to encourage me, and my local bishop started to encourage me, why don't I go off to seminary, do a grad degree, and see what happens. And I just went. The family and I, we packed up. We went up to Scranton, Pennsylvania. That's where the seminary is. And we didn't know what was going to happen, but we just went into the program. It was a 3-year program, and by the time I was done, they asked me if I would become a priest, and that was a tough decision. But we decided that was our path forward. And then it was in 2010 when they offered me to interview to come down to Miami for this parish. It would be a transitional role. There was the previous pastor was setting up his last few years before retirement, and then I would come down and overlap him. And so I started at the beginning of 2011 at the parish, and I've been ever since. I'm a Miamian now, 13 years, so I don't think there's any going back now.
No, 100%. And Pastor, something you've done very well, right, is transition from Scranton, right, to Miami, specifically an area in the county where, I mean, you walk into some restaurants, folks are speaking Spanish, and immediately immerse yourself in the community where your parish has grown.
Yeah, it has, yeah. I at first, I had an unfair advantage. My wife is fluent in Spanish, and so she was my walking Google Translate. My first culture shock was a week here. I go down to the Walmart in Hialeah on 49th. It was and I didn't know, it's actually, at the time, it was the biggest Walmart in America. I didn't know that at the time. Yeah, I don't know if it still is, but
on gross sales, I think it's still number one and number two. So
that was, and trying to figure out where things were and ask people for, where things were. And so the next time I went, I said, I'm bringing my wife with me, and we're going to figure this out. But no, I believe that wherever a priest is placed, he should embrace that community, become a part of that community. I've always lived in Miami Lakes since I lived here, because I believe in being a part of the local community and supporting things going on here, and just becoming part of the fabric of the local society. It's just important, I think, to connect and to have those. My kids all go to, they've gone to local schools. They're all in local programs here, like in Scouts and different things like that. So they're involved in local things, and it's good. It's good to be a part of of a community, especially one as great as Miami Lakes. It's an incredible place to live, and and thank you for all you've done in the time you've been mayor of Miami Lakes, because I know it's you've done a lot of improvement here and a lot of good tasks here.
Appreciate it.
So yeah, thank God.
Listen, I'll never forget one of my favorite Father Lucas stories. A couple summers back, you all remember, there were BLM protests, all this stuff happening, and there was a BLM protest in Miami Lakes. But what they weren't expecting was that there was a counter protest, right? So in other places they were and in the middle of it was Father Lucas, not taking sides, but showcasing God's goodness to tell folks, hey, relax. Nobody here is going to do anything bad. Nobody's going to break anything. You're not going to. And not only was Father Lucas there showcasing a person of faith, but you were decked out. I mean, you and how was that experience? Because a lot of times, men of faith, people of faith, women of faith believe that faith is only within the walls of their church. But what you did that day, and I remember sitting back, it was you and Pastor Stewart.
Yes.
But what you did that day, I remember just your presence, how that changed. That people were like, oh man, the priest is here. I gotta behave good. How was that day?
It was difficult because first of all, I don't personally get involved in politics, right? I want to be above the fray a bit for my people so that I can be able to minister to them. And our church generally only speaks on specific ethical, moral issues. Like, we don't take sides on like big political, like back and forth issues and things like that. And so, our church has not made any formal statements for or against like the BLM, activists and so forth. So I didn't really have a position going in per se, other than I want to make sure that our community is at peace. I want to make, if I can in any way just be there and say, hey, this is about, if this is about, us getting along together as brothers and sisters here in this community, then it's good, right? And maybe, but going into it, I didn't know what was going to happen. I could have been jumped and beat up in an alley somewhere. Who knows, But you have to take some risks sometimes, and it was literally walking distance from my house. So it's literally my backyard as well. It's not just the parish's backyard; it was my actual like house backyard. It's like walking distance from where I live with my family, and so I thought, it's good to be there and to see what's going on, and I brought a little handful of my parishioners to be there and kind of stand there and just be a calming presence. We didn't really take any sides. We just kind of talked to people and said, hey, just take it easy.
Our food sponsor for today is Pizza Scene. Shout out to Hector and Gloria. I love the Hawaiian Pizza there. It is amazing. My kids love the calzone. I know Hector and Gloria's son doesn't always like making that calzone because it's pretty tough, but it's amazing. So highly recommend it. And they're also an incredible family of faith. So be sure to go out and support them. No, listen, it's in Miami Lakes, nothing happened, right? We saw things happen all over the country here. Nothing happened at all, and kudos to you for doing that. And I think the other role that you play in society today, and I think maybe social media has led to this, where some people feel that there's a void in their life, right? And then there was an article I read this morning too, how folks are looking for parishes, for churches that are more traditional in the sense and obviously being an Orthodox church, right? There's what else is more traditional than an Orthodox church? So have you seen that shift towards folks coming in saying, hey, I want to be part of this? I mean, this is
definitely, yeah, we are getting inquirers and people converting to our faith on a regular basis. I just finished up a class with 22 adults who are interested in becoming members this year. And they're all local people. And I think there's a couple different things happening. I think part of this was the result of the pandemic. People were at home. They had time to think about their lives. They had time to realize that maybe there's more important things in life than just the physical things. That was part of it. I think also, there's a big movement in American Christianity for a long time, for maybe decades, to make it seeker sensitive, to make like catering to what people want. And I think that's also kind of coming to an end. People are tired of consumerism. Like, they want something that challenges them, right? And Orthodox Christianity it's one of the most ancient religions, right? That's still going on, right? And it has it's the way that it approaches life is meant to challenge us, to push us, not to just kind of pat us on the back and say, hey, you're doing a good job, but rather say, hey, you can do better with your life, with your interaction with people, with God, everything. And that apparently is starting to connect with people. They're starting to look for that. So we're kind of like the Marines version, like, we want like, what was the old Marines motto? It was like,
the few, the proud.
Yeah,
the
it's like
Marine.
something that challenges you.
Yeah,
Like, that's
yeah.
kind of how Orthodox Christianity is. It's like it's looking for those people that are willing to put the extra effort into their life of faith and commitment to God. And so yeah, it's a go-to place if someone wants that. And
So I remember years ago, Father Lucas invited me to attend service here, mass here.
Yeah.
And I walked in, and I didn't know what to make of it at first, because even the smell is different, right? There's incense, the how traditional it is. Your service, and I remember you telling me afterwards, and I'm just participated in, and I was just all into it, because this is one of the most amazing things that I've been a part of. But your service goes back the service that you do every single week. That's exactly how it was done. How many hundreds, if not thousands of years ago?
Yeah, so there was a little development maybe in the couple centuries right after the time when Christ walked the earth, and so we're talking first century. And the actual service we do every Sunday, the primary service, is called the Divine Liturgy of St. John Chrysostom. And that service, St. John Chrysostom, he died in the year 407. So we're talking within 300 years of the death and resurrection of Jesus, we had kind of reached a kind of set way of worshiping that we're still doing today. The difference being it's in English now, but other than that, it's primarily the same service. Little tweaks here and there historically maybe, but if he would walk into a church today, he would recognize that the service that and he didn't write it per se, he structured it, and he wrote maybe the prayers of consecration in the center of it, when the Holy Communion is consecrated. But basically, he would walk in and probably recognize, oh, that's the service we used to do. So that's 1,600 years at least, right, that we've been doing this continually.
1,600 years. I mean, that is phenomenal. And Father Lucas, one thing you did for me and my family that was so special, when my dad was in hospice and he was towards the end of his time here on earth, Father Lucas came by the house and brought something very, very special.
That's right.
And it gave my dad a lot of peace as he was transitioning to heaven. So, and those were the tears?
Yeah, we call them the tears of the Theotokos. Theotokos is a Greek word for the Virgin Mary. It means the one who gave birth to God. And so we had an icon, which is a painting, religious painting, that had come to our church a couple of years prior, and it was Anna, the mother of the Virgin Mary, holding Mary as an infant, and it's called the Honolulu icon because it was at an Orthodox church in Hawaii, and then one day it started weeping tears made of myrrh, which is a fragrant oil, and that came here. And I mean, I examined this thing. There's no way that this could be faked, right? It's very thin, and you can literally see all over the surface the tears forming and then dripping down, and they smell like nothing you ever imagined. You smelled it when.
Yep.
And so he gave me the priest who's in charge of taking it to visit various parishes, collected a little glass vial of the tears. And there have been several medically documented miracles, including a little blind boy who received his sight from being anointed with them. So that's why I thought, you never know what God has in store for any person, but to be able to come over to meet your dad and to anoint him with those tears, at the very least to give him peace in his soul, I thought that was important to do. So.
On behalf of my family, we've appreciated that always. That was truly amazing. Father Lucas, I know our team has some questions lined up for you. They were blown away, by the way, when they walked in. I was getting all the text messages, and what do you guys got?
So my question is, out of all your pastor activities, what is the one that you have the most fun with? Why do you what's your favorite thing to do as a pastor?
So the question is, what is my favorite thing to do as a pastor? So I love to teach. I do it in different capacities. I teach part-time over at St. Thomas University, but working with education here at the parish, particularly I do a Bible study and connecting with people on the scriptures, unpacking them for people, and the Q&A afterward. We always have sometimes my wife wonders where I am. I come home at 11 o'clock at night because we had 2 hours of Q&A after this particular Bible passage. And I have this kind of a general rule that unless I'm sick, I'm going to answer the last question for the night before I come home. And
That's amazing.
And so but it's fun. It's rewarding for me. I think it's helpful for them, and I really enjoy doing it. How has becoming a pastor changed my life? Well, the only thing I would have to compare it to is if I would have stayed in the banking industry. So, had I stayed in the banking industry, I was probably on the path to eventually getting up into upper management because I was in the corporate bank. Probably, I would have still been involved in my local church. I would have probably stayed in my hometown of Pittsburgh. I never got to get out and explore, Florida, for example. And I think the challenges would have been very different. I wouldn't have been responsible for people's souls, but I would have been still responsible for people's livelihoods and other things. So I would have had to, still approach it with a strong ethic of what's right and wrong, to do things for people, the right way, which is sometimes lacking in the business world, but I always wanted to bring that, to my job when I worked in that field. So yeah, it would have been a different path. It would have been, definitely different than being a priest. But I think that being a priest instead has forced me to constantly evaluate myself more, my own soul, my own spiritual life, to make sure that can be the best priest I can for my people. And I wouldn't have had that challenge, definitely, if I would have just stayed in the business world.
Are there any specific moments in your life that helped you realize that this was your calling?
Yeah, so were there any specific moments that helped me realize this was my calling? Well, I think I had a very hard time in college because I worked my way through college. It was difficult. I think there were times when I was pretty poor and looking at my life ahead. I think it made me appreciate things that were important in life, family, God, finding outlets in my church to connect with people and find things that are more important in life, I think was very, very helpful. So in my life, when you experience a little bit of hardship, or for example, I had a couple very close family members pass away around that time as well. And so experiencing things like death, things that are, that not everyone experiences until maybe late in life, right? Somebody might go along into their 50s or 60s before the first person that they're close to in their family passes away. When you experience hardship, death, poverty, anything like that when you're young, it makes you appreciate life, look for things that are deeper, look to God, and it certainly got me questioning things. I started questioning, what am I about? Where am I headed? And, where do I fit in the whole grand scheme of things, of the world, And then, having that outlet in my church and a priest who was willing to start guiding me and reading the Bible, reading theology, starting to understand these things, then the pieces started to come together. So having that motivation coming out of hardship, having a motivation to make sense of the world, I think was definitely big.
So this is kind of going back to the cathedral, first of all.
very beautiful. But I noticed, because I started looking up and everything, I saw that it was all the saints, and I saw that the paint around their head is a little bit different than like just regular paint.
Right. Yeah, so when you look at the icons, so this style of painting is called iconography, which just means an icon is an image, and something, graph means like written or painted. So iconography in an Orthodox church was formulated in the period called the Byzantine period. So the Byzantine period was the Eastern Roman Empire from about the time of the 4th century, and it fell when the Ottoman Turks conquered Constantinople in the 15th century. So it was about a 1,000-year empire. And so this style of painting was kind of developed and perfected by about the middle of that time period. And what they wanted to do was there were already painters who could do things in a more realistic style, but they wanted the paintings to reflect more of a heavenly reality. They wanted to show the various saints more like they are in heaven than how they were when they lived on earth. So there's a lot of different things that sometimes there's things we don't notice. For example, there are no shadows anywhere. There's no shadows under their feet. There's not even shadows on their face. There's no shadows where there would normally be shadows. And the idea is that they're just submerged in light, right? They're submerged in light, the light of God. But the light of God doesn't just surround them, it also comes from them. So this is the earliest version of a halo. The halo, originally was called a nimbus, but a halo, the idea of a halo was it's like the light coming out from their face. And imagine how a candle looks in the dark. When you hold a candle in the dark and it has that little ring around the top, so they look like little candles in the dark, and the light is coming from them, but it's God's light coming out of them. So what they started doing was they started using gold paint to paint around there so that not only is it brighter than the rest of the painting, but when the light hits it from either the outside light or from candlelight hits it, it reflects it back and makes it look like the light is coming from the person. So that's later on in later medieval paintings, for example, in the Roman Catholic Church, the halo, first it moved above the head. It was like a disc above the head, and then it became a ring above the head. But it's the same. It comes from the same tradition, right? It was originally this light behind, and then it just moved above, and then it became clear in the middle like a golden ring. But it has the same idea. It's supposed to represent light coming from a person. This is just an older version of that.
It's amazing. So, Father, we hand it over to you. You get to ask us 2 questions of me, of us, anything you want.
Sure. So I guess I'll start with you, Manny. So it's been a while since you came to that service, but what were your impressions that day? As someone coming in from the outside and seeing this style of worship and kind of this environment here, when you had a chance to go home and kind of reflect on it, what were your impressions after? What did you think?
I mean, I was so blown away and fascinated where today I talk about you all the time. Seriously, when I tell folks, have you been to Father Lucas's church? Have you gone by there? No, I go, man, that's the one with the dome, right in the curve of the Palmetto. And because not only walking in here and feeling the presence, as you said, of the saints and our Lord, but just going through and thinking back 1,600 years ago, right? And how our services, Christianity, how our services were done back then. I think, to me, I was really blown away. But more than anything, Father Lucas is you, right? As a father, you are not only a great man, but you're one of these folks that brings people closer to the faith, right? There's a lot of shepherds out there. Their flocks are very thin because of, their style. I think you don't tell people, hey, no, this is the only path, this is the only way. If you're a Baptist, if you're a Catholic, I don't know, you have to convert right now. You've never said that to anybody. And I think that is so powerful because you win people over with your actions, hence why your church has grown, right? How many members, how much has it grown from when you got here to...
Yeah. So the average Sunday attendance was 50 to 60 when I got here. We had 142 on this Sunday. So yeah, so it's
More than double.
it's growing rapidly. In fact, we're going to have an architect come and look at how we can maybe expand the floor space a little bit and be able to make room for people. We had to take all the chairs out this week. It's in our church. Sometimes the Easter doesn't align with the Catholic Church certain years. This year we're very late, so we're in the middle of our Passion Week this week. And we have our Easter this weekend, and so we know we're going to get packed. So we took all the chairs out this year, and so that we can fit all the people in here for the services. And so it's a good problem to have. And it's I'm hoping that we continue down that road and keep growing and being a resource for the local community.
But look, and one thing, and you got one more question after this.
Sure.
But one thing that I, walking in here and speaking to you always, that I'm reminded of, everything that I do as mayor. Cutting a ribbon on a new business, breaking ground on an infrastructure project, opening up a new building. Opening up a new program, it's all temporary. Yeah. At some point, it's going to have to be redone. It's going to fall apart. Hey, we know that when we do a road within the next 30, 40 years, we got to redo it. We know when we do a building the next 30, 40 years, we got to redo it. But your job is forever in terms of saving souls, right?
And hopefully it's generational, right? It's like whatever I'm doing, it's going to get passed on. The next generation after I'm gone, the next guy after me, and hopefully those people that are here, them and their kids, maybe their grandkids, will be connected here. And so hopefully it's generational, right? We're building something for generations, not just for right now.
Eternal in heaven, and then here on earth as well. So, Father, you got one more.
All right, I'm going to ask you again because so I know, unfortunately, I have services tomorrow for Passion Week, but I know that you always do the prayer for Miami Lakes, and you have all the local pastors come. That's been a great resource and ministry for local people to come and hear all the different local religious leaders say a prayer for Miami Lakes.
Yep.
And I know you're running for now mayor of Miami-Dade County. So your views and love for making sure there's freedom of religion and support religion. How do you see that transitioning from your work as mayor here in Miami Lakes to this bigger field now? Do you perceive ways that, for example, protecting religious rights or involving local religious community leaders that you'll be able to do that in some way in a bigger field now if you get elected?
Oh, without a doubt. I think you have our current administration's done the opposite, right? Kind of pushed away our faith-based community, which I'm the other way around. I go, listen, we need to bring in those folks. Look, I remember when Pastor Stewart did Celebrate Recovery, and he talked to me. He was like, Manny, these government programs, when people are addicts and they're going through these government programs, the recidivism rates are through the roof. But when you add faith into that component, you see folks staying sober way long, sometimes forever, right? Yeah. And then that's when I realized, look, we have to keep injecting faith into every step of the way, because if we don't, then that's when you see major issues starting to happen, right? And I think there always needs to be that realization in people's ears and their eyes that our rights as residents of Miami-Dade County don't come from, government. Because if they do, if your rights come from a man, then they can be taken away from you. But if your rights come from God, and that's what our founders believed in, and they never can be taken away from you. Right. So no, with me, 100%, everything we've done in Miami Lakes with our faith community, we're gonna do the same in Miami-Dade County, because it needs to be part of the conversation. I had somebody the other day tell me, he's like, Mayor, I'm concerned that your faith might influence you. I was like, what? Can you repeat that? Yeah, I'm concerned. And I said, look, you would hope that my faith would influence my decisions. Why? My faith teaches me to love my neighbor. My faith teaches me to take care of those who can't take care of themselves. My faith teaches me to be empathetic. I go, you want all of those attributes in the decision-making process, right, in a community. And the individual who, I don't know if they were atheists or what, they just stayed, staring at me like, okay, but yeah, no, 100%. We're gonna do the same. So, Father, in closing, and then we'll take a quick tour with the team. We'll get some video, but in closing, some words of inspiration, motivation, words of wisdom to that next Father Lucas that today might be in Pennsylvania working in the banking industry, but yet doesn't know what his true calling is. And sometimes, just sharing words of somebody who's been in that position to where, sorry, we'll cut that out, guys. Somebody who's been in that position in Pennsylvania, where you were in the banking industry to where you're at today, that entire path. So
yeah, sure. So I mean, it's a job that is more than a job. So there's many types of careers you can have where it can put food on the table, but if that industry dried up, you would have to go find another job, right? You might be in tech and that tech industry dries up and you think, okay, that was a job. I might have liked it, but I go a different direction. But being a priest is always more than a job. It's a true vocation. And you got to give up a lot, right? I'm never going to make the salary that I could have made if I made it up to like VP of a branch at the bank or something like that. So you're giving up a certain lifestyle that you could have had. You're potentially taking on a lot of the burdens of your people because you have to carry that with them, right? You're praying for them, you're giving them guidance, you're looking for ways to help them. So much like a psychologist or a social worker, you take on a lot of the stress, but at the same time, you can't punch out at 5 p.m., right? Like some of those other types of care worker jobs, where someone has a problem at 10 o'clock at night, they're feeling suicidal tendencies or something, they're supposed to call me, right? I'm there. I'm going to answer that phone. I'm going to find out, hey, what's going on? Let's talk. Do you want to go grab a coffee? We'll talk in person, whatever, So you have to be willing to take on, it's that sacrifice, and sacrifice a bit of the lifestyle that you may have wanted in some other type of position. And you have to love people enough to want to be there for them. So, there's different aspects of the job. So, part of it is me doing services and the sacraments. So that's one aspect. Teaching is another aspect. And then caring for the people, that's the other aspect. And all those are difficult. They're different tasks, but they all have their own difficulty level, and you have to be willing to do all of them. So it's a job with a lot of different facets to it. And if someone feels called to go into ministry, and even if it's, that's just the Orthodox Church's, style of ministry, but it's not very dissimilar to Roman Catholic or Protestant, evangelical. They all have a lot of the same things: caring for the people, leading the services. It's not something that anyone should think about lightly, but it's also extremely necessary because ultimately, all the other jobs in society might be necessary, for the economy, for politics, they're all necessary in their own way, but none of it really means anything if the higher things, the transcendent, the divine things are not being taken care of. So I think that it's one of the most important jobs for those who are willing to take it.
And there you have it, a great man of faith, an incredible servant of our Lord, Father Lucas. Be sure to tune in next Wednesday on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and X. Thank you, Father.
Thank you.